Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar, only on LA Talk Radio.
Thank you. Welcome to Female Filmmakers Fuse. I almost messed up on the title there. My name is Alexa Polar. I'm your host. Co-host here, Robin Pabello.
Hello, happy Sunday.
Robin, where can people catch this if they're not listening live right now?
If you're not listening live, you can always go to the podcast section and listen on iTunes and Google Play. Also, I think we're also doing past Samba's here.
That's right. Our doggy host, Samba's here.
Yes. You can also
find it on iTunes. No, I'm sorry. You said that. YouTube.
Yes. Yeah. Also YouTube's on the interwebs.
Yeah. It makes it easier to share if you go on social media and you want to share your interviews and whatnot, or share it with someone if you find one that's interesting. If you want to call in today, it's 818-602-4929. Again, that's 818-602-4929. We have the fabulous Mari Meyer. I said that correctly?
You said that right.
All right. Hello. How are you today on this Sunday, this beautiful Sunday?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm just so honored to be here, so thank you for having me.
I'm honored to have you here. Real quick, just because my parents asked for a shout out. They listen to this show, and so, hi mom, hi dad, hola mami, hola papi, because they listen all the time. They're just like, say hi to us. And I was like, okay, I will say hi to you guys.
Hi, Alexa's parents.
Yes. Hola mami, hola papi.
Okay, Mari, you're a journalist and a filmmaker.
That's correct.
Narrow it down: filmmaker, writer, director, producer, everything.
Kind of all of the above.
Okay.
I've done, I guess most of what I've done is producing, but also writing, and then I directed my first documentary short, co-directed with Andrew Weeks, my partner, last year.
Okay.
So that was my first foray into film directing. I'd done some theater directing before, some like theater teaching. I have a background in theater as well, so this was my first like film directing experience.
Congrats!
Very
Thank
cool.
you. It was really great, and I'm looking forward to doing more of that.
Awesome. And you worked with theater artists in New York City who were recovering from substance abuse.
Yes, that's correct. So I was one of the founding members of this theater project called Outside In, and that was a part of the Stella Adler Studio of Acting Outreach Division.
Nice. Okay.
So I studied there, and then a few years after I studied there, I joined their outreach faculty, first through like a lot of volunteering, and then ultimately like sort of like made my way into the faculty. Which was really awesome to be like working and teaching alongside people that I consider like inspirations and mentors. And one of the things that we did was we wrote and performed original work with both people that were recovering from substance abuse issues and incarcerated people and formerly incarcerated people.
Oh, that's nice. So it's kind of like giving them a second chance.
Yeah,
I
think, and this I guess also ties back into what I believe is for me the core of journalism and filmmaking, is that everyone has a story that deserves to be shared, and that giving, especially people who historically or societally have come to understand that their story doesn't matter through like all these different ways, right? Maybe that you were in prison for a long time and you felt forgotten, you did something bad, and you being told that you could never rectify that thing that you did. And meanwhile, you're still alive on this earth. Like, what are you going to do with yourself? So I think the aspect that... Ooh, Samba.
Oh, come closer to them.
It's okay.
Hey, Samba's just letting you know. You have to be closer to
Like,
the
I
mic.
can't hear you. Thanks, Samba. Yeah, so I think for me that really spoke to me, because I think a lot of people, I cannot determine for another person what it's like for them going through that process, but a lot of people did say that they felt a second chance was given to them. Right. Because they were really listened to and heard for the first time in a long time, or maybe ever.
That's amazing. Yeah. And being a journalist, I know right now it's difficult being a journalist because of all the quote unquote fake news stuff. I do have one issue that I've had when it comes to that, and not fake news. It's one of the things where I think it was a competition with social media. And I think once social media got so large and people were sharing their own news, like you see people, and it's a pet peeve of mine is like when you watch a video that goes viral and you're seeing all these cameras and someone needing help and not one person helping that person that needs help, and everyone's just like trying to make it viral, so they're just filming it. I'm like, this is ridiculous. But everyone's trying to capture their version of the news. And with that being said, it's been a pet peeve of mine where I noticed that because of that, it didn't give enough time to fact check.
It's literally like you're in my brain. There are people like, so what is journalism like? I'm like, it's too fast.
Yeah.
I think that's really challenging. I work for several Dutch newspapers, and I work for their online divisions, which is really great because I get to do it from here. And they're really great newspapers. I'm very grateful to have that job and to be able to, help get stories out there that I believe are important. But the social media, the internet at large, and social media as a component of that have really reshaped in very important ways how we create content and how quickly everything has to get out there. It's almost like, and I'm not speaking for my employers right now, I'm just speaking as something that I've observed in general, that journalists are doing their best to get everything out there as quickly and as factually correct as they can. But I think what happens a lot is that it's better to be first and then to rectify or, correct later than to say, oh, maybe we should take another hour so that we can get that one person on the phone who can actually tell us what's going on.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of quotation marks. Like, this
allegedly.
this person says this and this happened. And that has become the news instead of the news is not the news until we know what happened or we have a better idea of what happened. So I think I don't like the term fake news. I think it, it's like a little bit of a gaslighting thing.
Yes, it
becomes
is.
This whole what are you really saying
exactly
when you say fake news? Because I think a lot of the more traditional outlets are trying really hard to be really good at their job. I think there's an opera singer.
That's
amazing. I think so.
Like, wow.
Next studio.
But yeah, so I really have a lot of respect for journalists and journalism, and I think it's hard to be a journalist at this time.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It all gets sort of like swept into this one pile of, and traditional news outlets have to like sort of go with that wave of like video content and quick and viral, and it's almost like they can't not write about it, but maybe they would rather probably write about something else.
Right, exactly. Because that's one of the reasons why I really love that show, what was it? Newsroom. Yeah, because it gave me that, oh man, I hope that people are watching this, especially in that field, to inspire them to go back to working like that. And I know it's not necessarily their fault because they are competing with things like Facebook where there's people sharing their stuff and it goes so quickly that everyone else wants to know more about it, so you're forced to know more about it. And it's, that's to me is more fake than anything. It's not that it's fake, but it's not coming from real reliable sources or people that have the integrity of telling a story the way it's supposed to be, which is on a bias basis. Like, like you're not supposed to be like, I'm going to go towards this and lean towards this unless you're telling a feel-good story. Like, hey, like I'm going to share like about this Good Samaritan. But when you're telling the story, like, and that's something that I've noticed too, where there's so much where we watch something and I fall victim to this too. Like I'm guilty of doing this, not victim, I'm guilty of doing this, where I see something and already based on what I've seen, that person's already guilty.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what it makes it interesting for film to come into that, because reality TV not being the actual reality that it says it is.
Right.
A lot of people are unaware of that.
Oh, everyone, reality TV is scripted.
Right.
I really hope I didn't
ruin anything
for you. But yeah, with us looking at reality TV thinking it's real, and then what is the next step after that is it's content that is scripted that we don't call reality TV, but what we know is scripted.
Right.
but you look at reality TV and you don't see it, but there's lights, there's wardrobe, there's a director, there's everything.
Oh, yeah.
Like that show Unreal. Like more people should watch that show Unreal.
Right.
And then everyone should watch The Post and Spotlight.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
You
Yes.
see me in the theater, I'm like cheering.
Yes.
Like
Especially-
getting teary-eyed looking at the printing presses on the
Yes.
Post. The Post was like, oh, it's so beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't the only one that nerded out on that.
Oh my god, absolutely not. I was like, oh, it's so great.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I grew up in Long Beach, and on Pine, and I don't know if it's still there, I doubt it, there is a Press Telegram, the newspaper.
It still exists. I'm
No, I
pretty
know it
sure.
still exists. I don't know if the way they had it, because you would see,
Oh.
you could walk by
Yeah.
and see how they're printing it, and I was
Yeah.
just like, as a kid, I would be just in awe of that. I was like, wow. I think that's part of the little taste of me wanting to be a writer. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if it in what realm, but I was just in awe of just looking at that. It was just amazing. So I totally get it, and it sucks that it's now not as available. I mean, good for the paper and all that stuff, you know, but at the same time, it gave journalism, the journalists, more time to tell a telling story. Like, you know what I mean? Like, now you're just so rushed, and it's funny because you go and you're reading things online, and then you see later corrections, and then corrections, and then corrections, like whether it's, believe it or not, typos or whatever, or like, we just found out this wasn't actually said, or we just found out this, you know. So it's like, it's really, really interesting to see that, because people sometimes don't even scroll all the way down to see all the corrections that were made or alterations that were made to the article that was posted an hour ago, you know.
Yeah, I'm not advocating like a snail's pace for the world at
Right.
large at all, but I do think that certain things could benefit from being done a little bit slower. At the same time, listening to you speak, I mean, the internet does give an opportunity in film as well for people to get their stories out there in a way
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
they haven't been able to before. Maybe the golden age of that has passed already, because now we're just drowning in content, and it's almost like impossible to know where to go or where to look. Like, I have to very carefully curate my podcast list and like the shows that I watch, because
Yeah.
I literally feel my brain filling up to the point that I cannot create anything myself anymore.
Right.
Like, I also have this feeling, I don't know if this is something you recognize, but I have this like dread where I'm like, okay, if I start to think about everything that's out there, all the stories have already been told.
Right.
So, to jump on that bandwagon, I had said, and it was really quite interesting, because I was like, every story has been told. It just hasn't been told in every different perspective,
no,
because
you're right.
everyone perceives everything in a different manner, in a different way, because you were raised differently from a different region or different religion or whatever your case by case scenario. So, I mean, even if the story's been told, like Cinderella, my goodness,
How many times? Yeah. How many
Do
times
you know
has
what
that
I mean?
been told? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's been
still fall for it.
Yes,
Yeah.
you do, because it's such a great storyline,
Yeah.
you know, and so that can be applicable in almost any religion, you know,
Right.
and any situation. So for me, I'm just like, it's okay. It's okay that it's been told. It's just, has your story been told? And that's what I think is beautiful. I was going to ask you, how did you get into from journalism into film? What actually sparked that connection?
Transition,
between the two?
or well, you're still a journalist. How do you do
Yes.
both? Or,
Well, I often joke that my gravestone will read The Reluctant Journalist, because I have seriously very much tried to get out of it, but it will always come back to me.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I've realized that I think as you get older, maybe you realize how certain things have truly informed you and shaped you, and that why would you try to leave them behind completely if they can still keep informing you? You're not less of a filmmaker if you're also a journalist.
Absolutely.
Kind of, that perspective. So yes, I do still work as a journalist. But yeah, I went to journalism school first in the Netherlands, which is where I'm from. Got my degree, and then I did an internship with the Dutch National News Correspondent in New York, which was like my dream internship.
Nice.
But also my sort of like secret dream that I didn't tell anyone else about was that I wanted to take acting classes while I was in New York. Sometimes you have to go very far away from
Of
home to
course.
feel the space and the freedom to do
Right.
that like nobody's watching you do something that like you might fail at like super hard.
It was like a guilty pleasure type of thing. Like you super secret didn't want anyone to know, but you really wanted to do it. And so did you pursue that?
I did, yes. I started taking acting classes in the evenings at the Stella Adler studio.
Nice.
Because I have workshops. And I think I might have told one of my coworkers at the news place at some point, and he's like, he just looked so puzzled. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, just something I want to do. So I was doing that, and it was just so amazing. Like, I really felt that there was like a part of me that was becoming unlocked. It was very scary too, don't get me wrong. It wasn't just all like, it's like a movie moment where it's like, I'm liberated. It was very scary, but I really felt like in my gut that it was something that I needed to be doing.
Right.
So I took the classes, and I talked to my teacher, this amazing woman who's like in her late 80s, Betsy Parrish. She worked with Stella Adler herself like for many years.
Oh my.
And I said, do you think I could do the conservatory program here, like to become like an actor? And she's like, oh yes, like that's how she talks. And I was like, so I walked home, and I was like, oh my god. And then I auditioned for the artistic director, who later became my boss actually in this when I was a faculty member, and they admitted me, and I was like, what? This is crazy, because they admit like 30 people a year to this program. And I was like, I have to do it. So I went back home after this internship, and I was like, so I'm going to move to New York to become an actor. And everyone's like, what in the world? Like, you have a very promising career as a journalist ahead of you. What are you doing? Like,
you can do both.
Yeah, but at the time, I just felt like I had something I needed to do. So I went on and I did it. And I studied there for 3 years, and it was hard and wonderful and challenging and all of those things, as art school is. And after I graduated, I tried to do the whole like actor thing where you get the headshots and you make a website for yourself, and you try to hustle real hard, and you take more extra classes, and then you work more extra jobs, and then I just realized I wasn't doing a whole lot of acting. And I realized I'd been writing since the time I was like 4 or 5 years old. Right. So I was like, maybe I should try my hand at this writing thing, and then maybe I can make something that I could potentially be in. So my friend from acting school and I, who became my collaborator, we adapted an Edgar Allan Poe story with female leads in a contemporary setting.
Nice.
Beautiful.
That made me realize that in the process of making that film, that all these different things I've been doing before, like journalism production and writing and just the general like making connections with people and bringing people together to make something, it was like all sort of coming together in that moment. And I was like, oh, like this is what I want to do. Yeah. Like I want to do this thing. And then, of course, everyone's like, this is really hard, right? I'm like, oh, God. Everything I've ever done has been very hard.
I mean, if it wasn't challenging, then anyone can do it, and that's actually what I feel like drives most people is like, like you're so excited and jazzed about what you want to do, and then once you hit that bump in the road, it's kind of like, do I continue or do I turn around? Yeah. And I feel like the people that actually have that passion and drive, it's like samba. Exactly.
She's like, let's not talk about passion and drive. Comes natural for samba.
But yeah, I think it's extremely brave to be able to jump from one career to another, especially like you went for one reason to New York, come back home, and you're like, hey, I'm just going to switch careers. I mean, not that you weren't going to leave your previous, but at the same time, like, it's kind of like, okay, how can I use what my skill and knowledge and my resources from this career and bring it over to what your new passion is?
Well, at that moment in time, I truly believed that I was leaving journalism behind for good, because in my mind, I was like, if I'm pursuing, because everyone's always like, if you can see yourself doing anything but acting, like, go do that other thing.
What?
I feel like it's got such a negative connotation. Like, oh, you don't want to work at the film industry. That was like literally one of the first questions that someone asked me. Like, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure?
Like, that's kind of belittling. And yes, I am. So I was like, no more journalism for me. I'm like an actor and I'm going to do this thing. And then at some point, of course, I realized like I can be an actor, and I still consider myself an actor. I have a film, the first short film I made now is like in festivals, and I'm in that film. I mean, I'm not auditioning right now, but I'm still acting in that film, and it's going to be screening.
Exactly.
And I just realized, like, through all these different phases that you don't know when something is going to come back into your life to serve you or to teach you something, and that all these lessons can be paced out. Like, it's not, you do something for a certain amount of time and then you learn everything there is to learn about it, and then you just move on and you never think about it again. Like, certain things don't hit you until, like, years later.
Right. No, absolutely. Now, tell us about your documentary. How did you come into that? Was that planned? Was it like, there's going to be a women's march, I'm going to go do a documentary on it, or was it just all accidental? How did that fall into place?
Well, it fell into place very quickly because it was, I think, in between the election and the women's march was maybe 2 months' time.
Yeah, it was quick.
I don't know if anyone remembers the feeling after the election. I'm sure we all I think very vividly go back to that moment in time. Just like crying to my mom on the phone, and she's like, "It's going to be okay." I'm like, "You don't understand."
Yes.
So I think I was just very upset, and the same, goes for my partner, and she's worked in film for many years. As a movie trailer producer, she has a lot of knowledge about story and crafting story, and we were just like, we should do something, you should make something, because this is like a unique moment in time, and we want to tell women's stories, and we very strongly felt like there was going to be a movement within this administration, as has been proven since, that women's stories were not going to be at the forefront, and certain rights were going to be ignored, rolled back, all that stuff.
Regressing completely.
Yes. So we initially thought, like, let's maybe try to link together the story of a woman who's newly come into activism, because the whole idea that, like, all of a sudden feminism is, like, not a bad word anymore, and we can like sort of like reclaim it, and we can reclaim the word nasty, and
so many words.
So many words
to say. Please continue.
So there was this idea that there was this whole new wave of women who were like, oh wait, if Obama isn't our president anymore, then that means we should maybe, put a pink hat on and like make a banner and like get on some barricades. So telling the story of a woman who comes from that perspective, and then telling the story of a woman who is literally decades older, who's already been through all of that, who didn't think she was going to have to do it again in her lifetime.
Oh, yes.
Unfortunately, the second storyline, we did find this amazing woman, this actress from New York called Catherine Grody, but we weren't able to connect with her as much as we wanted to at the Women's March itself. We did like a lot of pre-interviews with her in her home, and it was really great, but you want that march footage, but the march itself, I don't know if you were in DC, but it was just...
We were in LA.
Yeah, we went to the one in LA. How you were in DC?
Yeah.
How insane was that?
It's crazy. I mean, amazing, but also just like, what is happening? I don't think the organizers themselves realized how many people were going to show up.
Oh, yeah.
So, is there a march permit? Are we going to be moving eventually? How will we get from here to there? I mean, I've since learned that DC was designed to be confusing for foreign invaders.
Right.
So that made a lot of sense.
And locals.
Yeah. So luckily, the woman who ended up being our main subject / protagonist, we linked up with her in the morning. So I worked with these 4 amazing women from the School of Visual Arts who were in the documentary MFA program. And they brought cameras from the school, and they were super game to just like throw themselves into the march and follow this one woman around. And then like I had other few people running around just getting regular like march footage. So we were able to follow this one woman who invented a female superhero called the Vagilante. And we were able to follow her for, the entire day pretty much. And then we had, combined with like footage of her from before the march itself, that basically is the documentary.
And that's the name of the documentary, correct?
It's Vagilant.
Yes.
And where can we find this?
Well, it's going to screen in August at a festival called Global Impact in DC.
Oh,
amazing.
Nice.
So it's going to be screening there. It's still in consideration for a bunch of other festivals.
Including Female Filmmakers Fuse.
Including Female Filmmakers Fuse. Crossing my fingers. So it's still in consideration in a bunch of places, but once that whole process wraps up, obviously... our whole goal with this documentary was to tell the story of a woman by women. So we had a female editor, female composer, female DPs, female producers, female directors. Like most of the team was female, And we just want as many eyeballs on it as we can, so that people hopefully are inspired by this woman who said, enough.
Right.
I'm going to create a felt vagina suit. And like, literally push the vajay into the public eye with my entire body.
There you go.
So that's the story behind that documentary. And it is pretty in your face. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's for everyone in that regard, because there's definitely...
I mean, the march was pretty in everyone's face. I don't think anyone was expecting that. Excuse me. And so it was a really nice, like, boom, surprise. Like, what the, the numbers were just crazy. And the fact that it was nationwide.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, I believe there was other countries that did it as well in support. Yeah. It was insane.
My friends
global.
were sending me pictures from Amsterdam. They were like, we're at the Women's March in Amsterdam. And I was like, I love you guys.
Yeah, it was great.
No, it's absolutely global, because, I mean, like, to think that we could go backwards in time. I mean, we are supposed to learn from history. Why are we, like, going back? I mean, fashion, okay, fantastic. I'm down with
I'll
that.
go back to
Retro,
the 90s.
yeah.
I'm currently wearing high-waisted pants.
Yes, right? I mean, it's just insanity to think that is something that is feasible and is happening in our country.
It's a scared minority that... Well, like the pictures of just like 12 white men at a table, like talking about abortion rights. I mean, it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes to find the words to describe what you feel as a woman, and for me as a queer woman, as a minority, it's just, you're like, what? Why are you deciding these things about me? It just feels like you have no power, and I think that's ultimately what led to the making of that documentary. It's like, okay, well, you're going to try to take something away. We want to show you that we're here in some way.
Right.
That you're present, that you're not just a statistic, you're not just a number, that you're an actual living, breathing human being that has rights.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the thing, too. Like, I'm glad that this documentary is, like, in your face, because that, to me, is what filmmaking is. It's, like, the story, but it's also something that has to move you and shock you or make you cry or fall in love or go do something crazy, because that's the whole point of a message. It's a visceral experience, and like for something that's that loud, that message has to be seen and heard, and it has to kind of be just grab you by the face at that point in time.
Yes.
Because otherwise,
Not the pussy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you for that.
Only
certain
with
parts
permission.
you grab, other parts you never grab without consent.
Yes.
Without
This is also an educational
without
hour
consent.
now.
Exactly. And it's interesting because I try to, and I spoke about this not too long ago in a prior podcast, was like, my nephew is so it's so interesting to hear him. He's 10 and he is super vocal on it. Like, he cannot stand it, and he'll come to me like, he's like, did you see this? Did you hear about that? Like, and I was like, what? He's like, he's such a turd. He's and I don't want to influence him, is my point. Like, no one does, because I don't want it to be that excuse, like, this is taught, whatever. It's something he sees on his own, and that's what's amazing, is that a 10-year-old gets it.
Yeah, that should give us all hope, right?
Exactly.
Well, that's the thing. Is like in previous discussions I've had with this, is like, it's the millennials that are going to actually shift and make the change, because they are the future. You have the baby boomers, and then yes, you agree. She has to say something. And I feel like if it's not for them, and especially the younger generations, like 10-year-olds. I mean, even the 8-year-old, your 8-year-old niece, like, she's just like, no. She's like, I don't need that. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm like, let's just keep that going, because
hold on to that. In 10 years, you'll be able to.
Exactly.
It's just like, everything that they say blows my mind. For example, and this is just to, just to step aside for a second, because it just totally reminded me when you said that. They were having this conversation, the two of them, their brother or sister, and I just overheard it. And they were talking about another cousin, another nephew of mine, and they were like, I don't understand it. And they sounded like a little old couple talking, and I'm just sitting there observing, listening, and they're talking about online and app dating, and they're like, why do we need that? why does that exist? There's so many people in the world, in our city, in our neighborhood, that we could just come out and say, hi, nice to meet you. And my nephew, again, the same nephew, the 10-year-old, he's like, I'm not going to meet anyone online. I'm going to meet someone in person and say, hi, nice to meet you. I'd like to get to know you. Like, we're in the same area, blah, blah, blah. Like, we like the same thing. Dude. Right? And I'm like sitting there listening to them and I was like, what's happening? But this is what I mean. Like, that change is going to happen because it is a trend. That's just one example that it's just crazy how we're so in technology that we don't step out, you know? And then it's so much goes into it. Like the fact that men are so watching porn all the time that they expect that's how sex is, and so it causes issues as well. So it's just insane how everything surrounds like the instant gratification.
I think it will be hard for us to see exactly, or hard for us to know exactly how the internet has shaped our society until like maybe 20, 30, however many years from now. Because I think you're right. It's hard for us to step outside of ourselves in the present moment. Like, I don't think historically people have been too good at that.
Right.
And I think that's where filmmakers play a really important role, because
Absolutely.
they take the time to say what is actually happening here. And yes, you want to tell an entertaining story, but there's also room to tell sad stories and scary stories and shocking stories.
Exactly.
And because of that hunger, it kind of like goes back to itself, right? Because of that hunger for content, people will want to consume those stories.
Right. And it's great as filmmakers and then female filmmakers because we tell the story in a different perspective. And I've heard that and I've seen that like Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
I'm not the person that would see a comic book film, you know? That's just
not at all.
Not at all. So I sat there and I was in awe of it. And I was like, oh, wow, what is this? Like, it was amazing. And then when I would watch other things with the same character that was directed by a man, it was completely different. And it was weird how they point that out. Like, Wonder Woman, her thigh jiggled and everyone's like, it wasn't supposed to do that, it's supposed to be firm, you know? And I was just like, what is going like, I'm sorry, that's not how
Well, the way that the world feels like it has ownership of women's bodies is in general just something that we should be aware of at all times. Yeah, no, you're right. I'm thinking back to this panel that I went to with Jill Soloway when I Love Dick was just released. It was a women in film screening. Jill Soloway was there, Kevin Bacon was there, and the writer was there as well. And we're talking about female narratives and narratives surrounding, you know, people that identify as female. And both Jill Soloway and the writer said that one of the things that really shifted for them was that they started putting I at the beginning of sentences. Like, what is my perspective? Like, why, when I want to tell a story, I think of another person and what their story is, or why does it always have to start with a dude?
Right.
Like, can I say, like, I think we should talk about this? Like, we're just not so used to that as women, I feel like, to start things with I, because it's like, oh, God, well, I don't know if I'm right, or I don't know if this is called for at this very moment.
Right.
Well, it is called for at this very moment. We really need to do that more.
I think it's going to be, you know, a change that we have to all accept societally, because for some odd reason we're ingrained to apologize, you know,
absolutely.
and it's not like you're trying to. No. It's just you know, or the nodding. It's really interesting. I mean, I've been watching a lot of documentaries and like listening to panels and discussions, and it's just I've started to notice it myself, and I'm like, oh, that's right, I do nod and like agreeing,
encouraging,
like crazy. Yes, because we're trying to be this supportive and loving and nurturing person. I mean, I'm that way. I'm like very lovey-dovey, but you know, like when I'm on set, like focus, like
it's not all you are, right?
Yeah, that's exactly.
And the bizarre idea that that's then all you would be is just like, why?
Exactly. And it's interesting too, because like, for example, I wrote a project about rape culture, right? I wrote a script about it, and I contacted a therapist that specializes in, you know, victims and survivors and whatnot. And I said, hi, I want to introduce myself. I have a script. I want to make sure that it's told correctly, that it's not going to be like, I want to educate. So obviously there's going to be some shock to it, but I don't want it to be where I'm being disrespectful of anyone that's been through it. And she just loved the fact that I contacted her to do that. I've been in communication with her since, and I told her, I was like, when we start filming, I want you on set. You know, because I don't know, like what you said, I don't know what this person's been through or that person's, and I'm not going to ask. And if we're shooting something and it might cause like a trigger or something,
right,
I want her to be there. Or if for some reason it gets uncomfortable and I want her to be there so people can talk to her, or she can talk to them like, hey, what you guys just saw, this is actually something that really happens or whatever. Because it's fake, because we're sitting there with cameras and it's choreographed. Like I have our stunt coordinator who's Devin McNair. And she's Devin. Yes, and she specializes.
I listened to your episode.
Oh, amazing
that she did. Yeah,
exactly.
I shared an office space with her for a bit.
Awesome. And, she's great. So she's going to be the stunt coordinator because she specializes in those types of scenes, and so it's that kind of thing that I took the time to really, craft this so that it's done in a way that it's respectful but educational. I don't want to make it beautiful, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
And that's something that when I talked to Devin about it, she said, thank you, because so much that she's gone through with other directors, and especially male directors, where they're like, they want to capture it a different way. And I told her, I was like, when that scene happens, the rape scene, I was like, you're choreographing it. It has to be like a dance, like it's skilled dance. Like if something looks wrong or off and I'm not aware of it, you have my permission, like call cut, like immediately. And I told the actors the same thing. Like if something feels off, you could say stop, cut. I'm not going to be, I'm like, all right, well, what happened?
Stop, but cut.
You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, exactly. But you get what I'm saying.
No, of course.
But it's one of those things, like I think as a female, and not to, I'm sure there's men that do the same thing, but I think like we take it to a whole different level.
I think the basis of this conversation, though, is definitely one from the past, and knowing that there have been previous scenes that have been shot and captured. And I think that's the reason why that this conversation has come up, because, in the past it's been kind of glamorized, and, obviously it's a film. It is usually based off of somebody's truth of what has happened. And I think that's kind of where your vision, pre-discussing, how we want to capture things and make sure that it's not glamorized in that sense, where it is uncomfortable, because that's what it is. It's reality.
And it's interesting because I've talked to a couple of people where they said that it became a trend because of the way film was capturing rape, where it became a trend where people would fantasize and even try to do that with their partners, or like, how you do role playing, like let's role play the rape and the rapist attacking and I was like, what? And they said that, and they said it was weird because they saw it on a movie and they were aroused by what they were seeing, so they thought like, okay, like
this might be like a sexy thing to do in real life. And
that's what is crazy, because I don't want to arouse anyone. I want to scare people, like, oh my gosh, like that is. Of course,
but there's also the idea, and that's, I think, one of the things that's really hard for me as a maker, is that you don't know what other people do with what you say. Right? I mean,
that's true.
Someone might as well still be aroused by what you make, and
that's
that's
a sadist.
Like, I mean, there's literally an infinity of amount of different kinds of people in the world, and
I mean, they voted for Trump. So I was like,
hopefully when you create something, you will get the response that you are looking for. But I'm currently working on a script about two women trying to have a child, and I've tried to, like, I'm doing interviews right now with women that have gone through that experience, because there's many different ways that you can go about that process, and I want it to be, and it's can get quite ridiculous in certain ways, like celebrity look-alike books and like the sperm bank and stuff, like just like delightful little details where you're like, what? Which obviously, like, narratively is very funny,
right?
But I also just want to make sure that I capture a truth. Like, I can't capture everyone's truth, but I wanted to also, guess as a journalist, to just make sure that what I put out there is not just like entertainment for entertainment's sake.
Right.
It can be entertaining, but it should also be a truth. I like what you said about that every story has a core of truth to it, because it is someone's story. But especially with these topics that I feel like are educational in nature as well, because not many people know how that whole process works, right? It's just like, oh, these two women have a baby. Oh, I guess, did you have a donor? Like, they have all these, like, more like,
Right.
what is the word I'm looking for? Like kind of like voyeuristic.
Yeah.
Right.
This is kind of like, ooh, what happened?
Were you guys both there? I mean, well,
Did
one
you
of
have
you was
sex
there,
with
but
the guy? No, usually you don't. So it's important, that the story gets told in a way that it pays respect to the truth,
Correct.
right,
which is a truth.
right, exactly. Oh, that's a good way. Hey, well said.
I'm not a writer, just
She's a talker. No.
No, you're a DP, right? So,
Yeah.
but that's that's another chapter in the storytelling book.
true. Yeah.
So
Visually, that's why I tell my stories.
No, I wanted to jump back real quick with what you were talking about before when we first started, and the people that you helped with that were incarcerated and starting. It's something that's interesting is that there are a large amount of people that are incarcerated for crimes they did not commit. And it sucks that they have to go through essentially the same thing, the feeling of guilt when they weren't guilty of someone that did commit a crime, and they're both allowed to start their lives over and get a second chance. But it just sucks.
if they are, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just interesting that I've come across that as well, and I have personal ties to that as well, where it's like it just sucks to see someone and so many people go through that. What are your thoughts on that as a journalist?
On people who are wrongfully convicted?
Correct.
Oh my gosh, I have so many thoughts. Well, I think there's obviously things to be said for the way that the system is set up, and the fact that theoretically everyone gets appointed a lawyer if they cannot afford one, which is one of your rights that is being read to you when you are arrested. But
If you're read your rights.
If you are read your rights. But that in reality, a lot of these lawyers, they don't have the time because these cases just get distributed over actual lawyers with practices, and they don't actually have to be criminal
Lawyers, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, where a lot of stuff already starts to happen. There's obviously racial bias, cultural bias, where for whatever reason we assume that someone with a certain skin color is guilty more easily, or someone from a certain neighborhood, or someone with a certain background. Just because someone has done something in the past doesn't mean they've done something now. It could be that they have, but it also couldn't be, right?
Exactly.
But there's a lot of assumptions that are made, and there's just like a really backed up, I feel like, legal system that is kind of sinking itself with
absolutely
a lot of bureaucracy and
I mean, the whole issue on bailing, that's just...
And then there's the debt. Obviously, people go in bailing themselves out. There's people not being able to bail themselves out. The new documentary that's going to come out about... Wait, is it a documentary? I think it is a documentary about Khalif Browder, who was at Rikers for something he didn't do, and he was in there for years because his family couldn't make bail, and he didn't get a court date. He ended up getting out a few years later, and then ultimately he ended up committing suicide because a large part of his time at Rikers, from what I understand, he was in solitary.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can't...
like, that just, like, makes my heart, like, shrink. Like, when you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's this, like, feeling where you're like, oh, that the fact that can happen.
Exactly.
And I've been in Rikers, and I've worked in Rikers, and there's a lot of people in Rikers who I know try to do really good work, but they're working within a system it's just very difficult to maneuver within that system.
It's interesting because they're like innocent until proven guilty, and I feel like lately it's more you're guilty until you can prove yourself innocent. I
mean, I don't know enough about the current, the way the law is currently being practiced, and I haven't spent enough time in courtrooms to really be able to speak to that. I just know the end that I feel like a lot of people don't know, which is the actual, like, who are the people that are incarcerated and that are put in this, like, sub-society. Like, when you go to Rikers Island in New York, which is in Queens, by the way, you go over this bridge in a bus, and then you go, like, there's a whole bus system within Rikers Island itself, too, because it's really big.
Wow.
It's just this whole sub-society that's created. Just the way that we have communities for the very rich that are gated communities where they can be amongst themselves and don't have to worry about anyone bothering them. Like, we have societies for people that we don't want to deal with, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, let's not like thinking of New York and the displacement and the gentrification. Oh,
yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? This is what happens. Like, there's so many things that are so important to talk about, and then that some people are like, wow, this is really heavy.
I want to talk about films.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, but I think it is heavy, and it should be heavy, and to be able to, for the lack of a better term, sit with that discomfort, to say, yes, the sun is shining, and I'm about to have lunch, and I love my family, but also
Right.
all these things.
Exactly.
And to really allow yourself to feel that a little bit, because truly we are all fellow inhabitants of this
we're all
city,
human
this world.
beings.
Yeah.
We all have, the same insides. So it should have a connection, and unfortunately we don't. And I think that if we can get back to that basis of that humanity and like giving that moment of time to share whatever your story, whether it's big or small, it's important to that person, and so if we can make that connection, whether it's through storytelling or through in person, I feel like that's what really is going to bring us to a better place in the future.
That's why I enjoy this podcast, doing it, because I meet amazing people like yourself, Mari.
Oh, shucks.
But honestly, because
Oh my gosh.
it's crazy, because I'm meeting these amazing women, and we all unknowingly have the same set, like
We all
this
exist in the same world.
right.
We don't
and
know each other.
Exactly. And we're like, we want to make a change. We're doing this. We're making films. We're doing anything that we can to put ourselves out there, because it's our passion and we love to do it. And it's not an easy thing to do. And then we're also trying to make a change while doing it. That's just crazy and awesome at the same time.
It's a tall order, but while you're doing it, and it takes a lot of time and lots of perseverance.
Right.
But then when you see something that you've made, you're just like, okay, this is a story that needed to be out there.
Exactly. And that's what's great about it. That's what's amazing. And hearing all these, every week I learn something different, and I get inspired even more. And that's why I love it. And I love doing this. And I hope that people that listen to it feel the same thing that I feel by doing this. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I didn't listen to all of the episodes.
What? No, I'm kidding.
I know. I got an email beforehand. It's like, you cannot enter the building. You do like a 20-question quiz. That was a joke. I listened to some of the episodes. Devin's, of course, and some other episodes, and it is really inspiring to hear what other people are working on, how they're working on it. I get a little overloaded sometimes. I don't buy books anymore about like how you should be working, because then I just feel bad. I can't.
That's how? Oh my God, I'm doing it wrong.
This is the road to success. I'm doing it all wrong. So I think ultimately we all need to find out our own ways of working and what is effective for us. But
absolutely.
But it is nice to hear that there are literally an infinite number of paths.
Absolutely.
To get to a destination, because I have in my mind like, oh, this is what I would like to do eventually. Like, I would love to have like a production company or something like that, where I can like have more resources to tell these stories.
Right.
Maybe along the way I'll find out that that's not what I want, and I actually want to do something that would be more impactful.
Right.
But you don't know, right? And it can help to hear other women talk about their journeys.
Absolutely. And it's kind of like, oh, I want to connect with all these women in one way or another in the future on something. That's what's great about it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, our Callie, who was on our podcast, she was super smart and so funny and sweet about it. She's just like, because she's an author. And what she did, she's like, I want to go into filmmaking. How can I do this? She interviewed women from all different departments. And I was like, that's genius.
Super smart.
Like, hearing what they went through, the positives, the negatives, how to, like, it's kind of like, instead of reading like this book of just one person's perspective, she had like an assortment of like 30 people, and it was just amazing. It was like, that's smart.
Yeah,
that was
there
super
you go.
smart.
And then on top of that, then you built your network on top of it, and then met wonderful people on what to and what not to do.
But that's what this podcast is too, I feel like. I mean, and I think there's like an idea that, maybe we shouldn't put ourselves out there too much, or who am I to be speaking, or no, like you need to just leave that behind entirely.
Exactly. Like this right now, I had to stop it, but we're booked until January. That's crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's like, all right, cool. And we want to give a platform, an outlet for amazing women like yourself to come here and share their story and share with their insight and whatnot. And then people that listen to it, I hope that they're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Like, that's crazy. Like, I should have done that, or now I know what to do or what to avoid. And that's the whole point of this, is we're influencing and empowering and helping other female filmmakers and men too, that if they're listening to this, it's one of those things, like, I want them to hear it and be like, all right, now I know how to maybe do this differently, you know. I'm hoping. I don't know. Like,
yeah, or if there's someone in your life who happens to be female identifying who says, I have a story to tell, you can help them tell that story.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah, from whatever walk of life you're coming from, I think that's like the whole point, is just making that connection and be able to lift each other up, regardless of like if you're just beginning or if you've been doing this for 20 years. But I mean, like, that's the one thing that we have, is that connection.
Yeah, and I think what I've realized along the way is that for a long time I thought about writing screenplays and scripts, and I thought about making things, but for the longest time I thought, oh, like, that's something that other people do. Or like, I'm not going to go to another school, right? I have a journalism degree and acting degree.
Right.
Like, it's too late.
No, it's never too late.
And then you realize, you realize that the only thing, and it sounds so simple, but the only thing you have to do is begin.
Yep.
Yeah. That's always the hardest part. I think
it's the hardest
beginnings
part.
are like the scariest, because you're just
scary.
like, should have jumped.
Just go for it.
What if it's gonna suck?
Right. What if it's gonna hurt? It's
what
okay.
if it's gonna hurt?
Right.
I guess I don't know. I guess I have that kid mentality still. Like, and I'm going to hold on to that forever, because like, I will jump first.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. It is super scary, but it's like, if I don't do it first, I'm just not going to do it.
So I guess I'm that one person that is like, if your friend jumps off the bridge with you, I guess I would be the one that's like, well, she jumped first, so I'm kidding.
I was going to say,
Robin
no, I'm
went
just
first.
kidding.
She
Robin
always
went
has
first.
really
So
good ideas,
that was
so.
a great idea. No, I'm kidding. But because of you, zip lining. That's right. You took me zip lining.
Super like mile long zip lining, and there was like, everybody was there, and then we got there, and everyone was like, and I'm like, I'm going first. Me.
And she went.
And I was like, gone.
And I was super scared because I'm scared of heights, and I did
Same.
it. You know, and it was I thought it was
Good
one
for
zip
you.
line.
That's awesome.
There was like 5 of them. I was like, wait, we're not done. You got to get down to the bottom. It takes 5
Like, can
different
I be
times.
hooked onto another human being?
Right. But anyhow, we got to wrap it up. Where can we find you? Where can people find
that
you?
time?
Yeah.
I'm let's keep hanging out.
Right.
So people can find me online, marimeyer.com, MariMeyer.com. I'm on Twitter as well, Mari C, Mari Do.
That's cute. I love that.
So yeah, come find me online and see what I'm working on. Like I said, I'm working on the pilot about the women who want to create a family and how they're going to go about it. I'm also shooting a teaser for another project that I'm working on, a digital series about musicians in New York City, street musicians primarily. So I'm going to go back to New York for that in October to shoot a teaser for that.
Awesome.
Hopefully this will be the first project that I do where there's going to be some either grants or outside funding, or just a little bit more of an injection from the outside.
Great.
So
If you need help, I have family over there, so I can work as a local.
excellent. Okay. I'll
There you go.
get your email after the show. Yeah, so I'm excited about what's in store, and it always turns out differently than you thought, but
Absolutely. That's true.
Great.
usually better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to it and seeing you continue to succeed, and hopefully get you back here, obviously, after January. And
Yes, I would love to come back. Thank you so much again for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here.
No, thank you for being here.
Thanks
Yeah.
Hey, she doesn't
Samba's
want
like-
everybody.
There you go. Have a good Sunday, everyone.
Yes.
Thanks, Robin, again for co-hosting, and Mari, thank you so much.
Happy Sunday.
Have
Happy
a great
Sunday to you.
week.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar, only on LA Talk Radio.